Now, this being a Star Trek special, it would seem obvious to everybody that we should be looking at some Star Trek comics.
Yeah, that would seem logical.
You're going to keep doing that, aren't you?
I think I am.
Great.
Also, logically, we should probably start with one of the original series Star Trek comics. So we had a look at Star Trek Archives Volume 1, a collection of 3 stories written by Peter David.
Yeah, now this annual kind of underlines to me why the Star Trek comics haven't had such a broad appeal. We start with a single issue story that follows Scotty's on-again, off-again relationship with a woman named Glynis Campbell. It's very much a story of its time, extremely sentimental and unlikely to appeal unless you're a massive Scotty fan.
Yeah, now it does pick up a bit with the second story, a 3-parter called The Return of the Worthy, which plays out very much like an episode of Star Trek. Well, at least one of the less action-packed episodes anyway. The focus is very much on interactions between characters and emotional outbursts, but it's still a decent tale and features tragedy, alien races, and good-natured ribbing between Spock and Bones.
The final story is again very tied to the show, with Kirk trying to write a eulogy for one of his fallen men. Overall, I found this annual just felt a little bit dated, but the feeling of the show was very much in evidence, and all the characters did look spot on.
Yeah, moving forward, we have Star Trek New Frontier, also written by fan favourite Peter David, set within the Next Generation universe and bucking trends by having new characters and a new ship called the Excalibur.
I think the introduction of new things was a really good decision, especially if you're trying to attract an audience that aren't necessarily huge fans of the TV show. As a result, New Frontier is markedly less referential and allows the opportunity to get to know the characters rather than knowing everything about them before you even open the first page.
It strikes a moodier tone than a lot of the Trek comics and provides a good range of character emotion, possibly because he didn't have to slavishly recreate real people's faces. However, although I do agree that it is less referential, I still think people that aren't that familiar with the show may still have a tricky time getting into it.
Possibly so, but moving on to something that we will all be familiar with, we have the trade edition of Countdown to Darkness, the tie-in to the recently released Star Trek movie, written by Roberto Orci and Mike Johnson.
Now, we did look at the first issue of this series in our SFTV mini-show, but now with the movie and the trade coming out of Countdown to Darkness, we thought it was worth having a look at the whole thing.
Yeah.
We didn't think that much of the first issue, but what about the whole trade?
Nope.
No.
Didn't like it either. All the problems are still in there. The characters look almost, but not quite like the actors in the film, which is kind of off-putting and quite jarring.
And the plot hints at the plot of the movie, but avoids standing on its toes, which just kind of leaves you with a weak story.
Overall, you're probably better just going to see the movie and giving this comic a fairly wide berth.
Yeah, unfortunately so.
Yeah.
So that's our look at a few of the Star Trek comic options out there. Now, honestly, it was a little tricky to get a hold of many, so hopefully that'll change with the success of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if you've read any Star Trek comics that have just knocked your socks off, let us know. Tell us on Facebook, Twitter, or on the YouTube comments. We would love to know.